almost quite certain it means something else, and that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I'm never wrong.
And I'd like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would advise you to do so. Mama always has a way of coming suddenly back into her room, which I've always had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I've admired you more than any other girl. Ever since I've met you.
Yes, I am quite aware of that fact, and I often wish that in public at any rate you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the monthly magazines, as it always reaches the provincial pulpit, as I am told. My ideal has always been to love someone of the name Ernest. There is something in that name that inspires complete confidence. When Algernon told me he had a friend named Ernest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolen.
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Ernest.
But you really mean you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest?
But your name is Ernest.
No, it is. But supposing it was something else. Do you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
That is clearly a metaphysical speculation, and like most metaphysical speculations, there's very little reference to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Personally, darling, to speak quite candidly, I don't much care about the name Ernest. I don't think the name suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Well, really, Gwendolen, I must say that I think there are lots of other, much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack. There is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all, indeed. It produces no thrill. It has absolutely no vibrations. Besides, I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, have been morbid and usually plain. Besides, Jack is a common domesticity for John, and I pity any woman who has to be married to a man named John. She would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Ernest.
Gwendolen, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely, you know that I love you, and you led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you are not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you. But nothing has been said at all about the subject of marriage. In fact, it hasn't even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
It would be an admirable opportunity, and to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I find it only fair to tell you that I fully intend to accept you.
Gwendolen.
Yes, what have you got to say to me?
You know what I have got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolen, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long you've been about it. I'm afraid you've had very little experience in how to propose.
My own one. I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite blue. I will hope you will look at me that way, especially when other people are present.